Summary of Fish in a Tree by Lynda Mullaly Hunt. Ally, a 6th grader, and her teacher, Mrs. Hall, fight about the writing task Ally has to do. She is supposed to write about herself so that when Mrs. Hall goes on maternity leave, the new teacher will know more about the kids. Ally's paper is covered with the word "why" after a fight. She tells the reader that she doesn't want to write because no matter how hard she tries, she can't read or write. A few days after that, Mrs. Hall will have her baby party. Ally gives Mrs. Hall a card with yellow roses on it, but Mrs. Hall doesn't look happy. When Shay, the class bully, sees Ally's card, he tells her she is stupid. Ally doesn't know what to do until Mrs. Silver, the principal, asks her why she would bring a sorrow card to a baby shower. Mrs. Silver asks Ally to read a sign on the wall in the office. Ally acts like she can read it when she sees two hands reaching toward each other. That afternoon, while Ally is doing her homework at the restaurant where her mom works, Shay and Jessica stop by and make fun of her for being stupid. Ally's sketchbook of impossible things is a book where she draws and writes down things that will never happen in real life. Travis, Ally's big brother, takes her coin shopping that weekend. Travis is able to buy a valuable coin for himself and a special dime for Ally because the seller doesn't take him seriously. The coins were made in the same year that their grandfather was born. Their grandfather died about a year ago. Ally is shocked to find out that coins are only worth money if they are different from each other. Mr. Daniels, Ally's new teacher, has his students do a show and tell activity. A new student named Keisha brings in a homemade cupcake, and a big, science-loving boy named Albert brings in water. Ally shows the class a steel penny that her dad gave her before he left to serve in the military. After a few days, Mr. Daniels gives out notebooks. He won't grade what the kids write, so Ally draws a black cube to see if this is true. Mr. Daniels asks her about it. When she says it's a dark room where she can be invisible, he tells her he's glad she's not invisible. Ally takes Shay and Jessica up on their offer to sit with them at lunch. She wants to be a part of something like the friendship bands they have. Ally joins in when they make fun of Albert, but she tells him she's sorry the next day. Backstage before the holiday show, Mrs. Muldoon gives each of the girls a bunch of flowers. When Keisha touches hers, a bud breaks off. Mrs. Muldoon takes Keisha's bouquet away while Shay says mean things. Ally breaks her bunch in half so Keisha can have flowers, but Mrs. Muldoon also takes her flowers away. The girls start to hang out with each other and eat lunch together. Ally starts trying to do her writing homework because she wants Mr. Daniels to like her. Travis says he can fix cars like a pro, but he can't help Ally with the papers because he can't write. Ally turns in one task, afraid that Mr. Daniels will think it only took a few minutes. She tells him the truth when he asks how long it took, hours. Even so, Ally comes up with ways to avoid writing, like pretending to have a broken arm. Ally asks Albert to lunch with her and Keisha because she sees that Albert is always hurt. She finds out that Albert's lunch is on the house. Shay and Jessica tease Albert, Ally, and Keisha about being misfit toys, and Ally starts to think that, just like many of the misfit toys are normal except for their strange names, there must be more to her than just being a slow reader. Later, Ally and Keisha find out that Albert always wears a shirt that says Flint because Flint is his favorite Star Trek character. Flint lives on his own world to get away from mean people, which Albert likes. Albert and Keisha go to Peterson's for ice cream that afternoon. Keisha tries to get Albert to fight the bullies who beat him up every day, but he won't. During a lesson on words, Mr. Daniels asks a student to explain what the difference is between the words alone and lonely. Ally raises her hand, and even though her answer is great, she still feels like she did something wrong. Later, Mr. Daniels has the students write about heroes from stories. Ally makes up a hero named Roy G. Biv, who represents all of the colors. Mr. Daniels asks her to tell him about Roy G. Biv instead of just writing about him in her paper. He tells her that he likes how she thinks outside the box. Ally tells the class about her hero, and then she hears Shay and Jessica talking about friendship bracelets. she finds out that Shay is selling them. Mr. Daniels says he made a poem contest and names Ally as the winner. She's happy at first, but soon she learns it's a pity award, which makes her feel bad, so she runs out of the room. Ally wants to fit in, but Keisha tells her it's silly. Mr. Daniels asks Ally one day after school if reading gives her headaches and if the letters on the page move. She is surprised when she realizes that these things aren't usual. He offers to teach her how to play chess after school so she won't have to do her chores. Ally says yes. A few days later, while on a field trip to the Noah Webster Museum, Mr. Daniels meets Ally outside and tells her that she might have dyslexia, which is a reading disorder. He tells her that she can learn to read, but she will have to learn in different ways. For the first time, Ally has hope. Ally starts to play chess and is tested over the next few weeks. She does have dyslexia, and she agrees to stay after school more to work on reading and chess with Mr. Daniels, which she enjoys and finds easy. Ally, Mom, and Travis Skype with Dad one afternoon. Ally tells Dad about all her good news, but Travis doesn't have much good news. His new boss at the car shop wants him to look things up in the book before making fixes, which Travis finds hard. Ally keeps staying with Mr. Daniels after school. He leads her through an activity to show her that anything is possible. Ally puts the piece of paper with the word possible in her pocket. Later, when Ally and her friends are hanging out at Albert's house, she tells them that she has trouble in school because she has dyslexia. On Monday, a substitute will be at school. Shay is more likely to say mean things when the sub says out loud that Ally can draw instead of write. Ally feels so hurt that she writes Mr. Daniels a note telling him she won't be staying after school anymore. Mr. Daniels says he's sorry the next day and tells Ally he never meant to hurt her. A few days later, Mr. Daniels gives the class a logic puzzle, which only Ally can solve on her own. After a week, Jessica puts Shay's name forward for class president. Ally is chosen by Shay. Ally decides to run for office and stays up all night writing a speech. The next day, Albert and Keisha push Ally to tell her class that she wants to make everyone's views louder. Shay says things that can't be true, like bigger lockers and longer breaks. Mr. Daniels counts the votes in front of the class, and Ally wins, which is a big surprise. The next day, famous peer Max sends Ally what she thinks is a love letter. She can't figure out what it says, but later that afternoon, she finds out that Shay wrote the letter to make Ally look bad. Max also finds out, and he is very mad at Shay. Ally's dad, Mr. Daniels, gives her a book to read. Later, she makes a detailed model of the house from the book, which makes Mr. Daniels tell Ally for the first time that he's proud of her. That night, while Ally is drawing in her sketchbook of impossible things, she thinks about how it's no longer the only thing that makes her happy. Travis asks Ally what she's learning from Mr. Daniels, but he says no when she offers to show him what she's learned. During a social studies unit, Mr. Daniels asks the class to tell him about great people like Albert Einstein, George Washington, and Henry Ford. Mr. Daniels says that it is thought that those people had dyslexia, but that doesn't mean they didn't change the world. Ally is shocked when she finds out that other people probably thought they were dumb too. Ally's friends tell her over the next few days that they think it's cool that she has dyslexia. Even the people who follow Shay stop bullying and put their friendship bracelets on Shay's desk. Ally tries to talk to Shay, but Shay answers her in a mean way. The bullies hit Ally, Keisha, and Albert as they walk home from school. Albert finally fights back, and Ally sees that he cares too much about his friends to let them get hurt. The next day, Ally gives Mrs. Silver a note when she goes to her office. Ally asks Mrs. Silver to read the handwritten sign that says it takes courage to ask for help. Mrs. Silver tells Ally she's student of the month and says she's sorry she didn't help her sooner. When Travis comes to pick Ally up from school that day, Ally sees that Travis must also have dyslexia. She runs to Mr. Daniels and asks him to help Travis learn to read, which he agrees to do. Ally thinks that anything is possible.
About the author. She was born in Tennessee in the year 1960. She was the youngest of 5 kids and spent a lot of time outside when she was young. One of her brothers died just before he turned 4, and Hunt wrote songs about him all through her youth. She says that these songs were the start of her writing job as an adult. She has 2 degrees in teaching, and when she was a teacher, she found that her students were much more open to having their own writing reviewed when they were also able to edit hers. This made Hunt start writing terrible stories, which she says she did on purpose and then gave to her students to fix. She quit teaching to have her 2 kids, and when they were young, she joined a group of writers. One for the Murphys, her first book, came out in 2012. At this time, she started writing what would become Fish in a Tree. At first, it was called Alphabet Soup and was set in the 1970s.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.